This is our July webinar, switching things up a little bit this month. We are going to be talking to some of our partners, some of our friends who serve with trafficking survivors internationally, so outside of the US, and I kind of learn from them and hear what's going on in the international fight against trafficking in honor of July 30th, which is World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, and just as an effort to remind our industry, remind our supporters and our allies that we're really all a part of something that's so much bigger than just the people that we are working with in our own communities. I noticed so much that even working nationally as somebody who gets to do that and work from coast to coast, I see a lot of things that our partners who are working within their own communities don't have the opportunity to see. And so often they feel like they're alone or an island in this fight, or in that this thing is they are only under-resourced in their county, or they are only seeing this certain victimization in their county or their area. And when we get to collaborate and show that we are part of something, even just in my lane nationally, that this is something that we're all experiencing, it's so unifying. And so it's really exciting to me to kind of get to do that on a world perspective, that while maybe the names and the faces and the specifics of a situation may look a little bit different depending on where you are in the world, so much of what is needed as far as resources, as far as restorative care services, and just attitude changes and just grabbing the hearts of the community members to support survivors is the same. And so we're going to get started here in a minute, just as we let people roll in. We're only at the second minute of the hour, so I'm sure I'll say these things a few times as we get started. So take your time and come in and get ready. We are hopefully, I always like to throw out the little asterisk of hopefully going to have a time for question and answer at the end. We always get so much good meat content in the webinars that so often we are scrambling to even try and get one question in. So hopefully we'll get to a question. If not, we'll gather those questions and hopefully get some answers from our panelists after the fact, and we can send them to attendees in a later email. But in the meantime, if you do have questions, attendees, please use the question and answer portion of Zoom and not the regular chat. If you put them in chat, I will probably still be able to see them, but it's much more likely that we'll be able to see them and access them if they're all captured in the question and answer portion there, because that's a much easier accessible, wade through all of the introductions and everything. And that being said, attendees, if you so desire and you want to put into the chat who you are and where you're from, and even just what you are looking forward to about this webinar, we would love to hear from you as we're waiting just another minute or so for people to hop on if they have chosen to come to the live. I know this is an awkward time, 4 p.m. on a Thursday for a lot. It was 1 p.m.
Logistically, do you want us to answer questions like within the Q&A box during if we're not speaking, or should we be on mute when we're not speaking, I'm assuming?
Yeah, please be on mute when you're not speaking. I'm going to be. I have 2 giant dogs and a 6-year-old. So I'm definitely going to be on mute. Please be on mute when you're not speaking, panelists. And yeah, if there is a question that grabs your attention that you really have the desire to answer there in the box, because you can do that. You can access the question and answer portion of the webinar and actually type in answers. You can do that. If you want to leave and wait and until the end, you can do that as well, because I know that if you're a verbal processor like me, that is so much easier for me to answer than to type in. But if this is something that I want to answer now, I don't have any boundaries around that. Feel free. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I see that. It shouldn't be. Let me see before we get started how we can do that. I am not the Zoom person.
You're doing fabulous.
I am not the technology person. I'm hoping. That's so sad. What a bummer. Let me just tell you that not everything has gone off without a hitch in preparation. So this is pretty standard for what has been happening for the rest of getting this together. With my limited Zoom knowledge, I don't know if I'm going to be able to enable that. So if there is like a Zoom aficionado here that wants to tell me how to do that, would love it. Otherwise, we're probably just going to go ahead and jump in, find it under security. This is teamwork, you guys. Look at us, a world united already. We're doing so great. Let's see, I'm going to take one more minute to try and do that. And then if I don't get it, we're going to just go ahead and move on. And the question and answer is working. And that's, yeah, I see that.
The chat is working, I see, to the hosts and panelists, but not for everyone.
Yeah, that it is. And that, I believe, is a settings issue that I'm not going to be able to change.
But maybe if you're trying the drop down and you choose Safe House Project, because that's you and you're the admin, it might allow people to communicate back. I don't know, but that could be.
You can just tell everybody, announce everybody to introduce themselves in the Q&A.
Yeah, we can see, we can also see the chat. The hosts and panelists can see the chat. It's not enabled for the rest of the attendees. It is right. What's happening. And so that, yeah, that's a pre-setting on our webinar service, I believe, for the way we've had all the webinars set up. So I'm sorry, everyone, for that, but I do want to just jump in because we have a short time together and there are so many of us, and I want to just make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from our panelists. And so just know that if you put into the chat, we can see it. We can definitely see it. And you are welcome to drop it in the Q&A if you do want to introduce yourself and use that to put any of your thoughts or anything in there, feel free. And again, just for those who have jumped on in the last few minutes, we are kicking off our World United webinar just in kind of in honor of July 30th, which is World Against Trafficking in Persons Day, and just as an effort to remind ourselves, remind our industry, remind our allies and people in the community that support this work, that this is really something that, although so much of our lens is focused nationally on the day-to-day, we are all interconnected in this fight to just see that people have the ability to access justice, that they have the ability to access resources and new life if they so choose, and have equity in those services. And that's a fight that's happening nationally and internationally on an even bigger scale than I think we can even imagine or comprehend. And so really excited to introduce all of you who are either here live or who are watching this recording later on to our incredible panelists and hear a little bit about what they do. So thank you all for just taking time out of your busy day to just share a little bit about who you are, what your work is, and what you hope to see just as we continue to be a united front, or as we hope to be a united front. And so could you each take a moment, and David's right underneath me, so I'm gonna punt to David first. Could you just take a moment, help us understand like who you are and where you currently serve?
Hey, it's an honor to be here with you all. It's good to see you. I am a musician. That's my day job. That's the way I make a living, is playing rock and roll. And for the last 9 years now, we've used our concerts and our albums to shine a light on slavery and human trafficking and sex trafficking by writing songs about it. But then I also volunteer with a counter-trafficking intervention organization called the Exodus Road. So I just got back from Asia, spying on some criminal networks that are selling girls and women. And then we did a raid here recently. And that's what I do when I have time to go overseas. And then I recruit people into that organization. And then we also sell all our band's t-shirts and kimonos and boho pants and elephants from organizations similar to what you all are doing. And I need somebody stateside that's doing this too, because all of it is in Asia and Latin America so far. But I want to purchase from organizations that are doing aftercare and rehabilitation here in the States as well. I live near Thistle Farms, and I know they have soap and stuff. But that's what we do. We raise awareness. I help intervening and doing raids and dismantling criminal networks. And then we support a dozen or so aftercare organizations as well. The band's name is Remedy Drive.
Thanks, David. I'm glad you're here. Jenny Sue, would you mind introducing yourself?
Jenny Sue.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for taking part of your day to hang out with us. I am honored to be among this tribe of fierce and wonderful human beings. My name is Jenny Sue Jessen, And I myself am a survivor leader, a subject matter expert. I experienced domestic minor sex trafficking here in the US, was sold into the sex trade at the age of 4 by my grandfather. And then God provided for my rescue and escape the day after a failed suicide attempt at the age of 17. Part of my healing and redemptive process, healing's a long journey, that's a story for another time, but I have been able with my husband to found an international nonprofit called Compass 31, and we exist to make Jesus known by fighting human trafficking with prevention, restoration, and leadership development. And currently we have restoration projects in Thailand, Bangladesh, and the Middle East. And then in the US, which is where I'm currently based, I was appointed to a 2-year term by former President Trump to serve on the US Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, where I bring my experience and expertise to help inform federal counter-trafficking policy. So that's the thumbnail sketch of who I am and where I come from. I'll pass it back.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Jenny and Marcia.
Hi, I'm Jenny Cirillo, and I work alongside of Marcia Ball, and we were both former university professors and left our positions, oh gosh, 22 years ago now, and started our journey with training across the world. We've had the awesome privilege of training in 53 nations and have just loved every minute of being able to influence influencers. That's our target audience, is the leaders in countries. We started out with HIV and AIDS prevention. And of course, that is all wrapped around the whole piece of abuse and exploitation of children that we really focus on now. And we have many other things that we do. I will pass it to Marsh to finish up.
I think the sweet spot for us at Curis Global Education is prevention. We write curriculum and training programs, and we also have a community development project in a township in South Africa. We're all about awareness and education of the right people and networks to bring about the biggest change we can.
And we do have an orphan care center in this community project, and a safe house and an academic enrichment center where we reach out to grannies for education. And that's in South Africa in the township of Soshanguve. That's our heart project. So
Thank you so much. It's been so fun to watch Marcia and Jenny start new little endeavors over the last year or so, and especially get to see them go back to South Africa after COVID. So I'm glad you guys were able to be here. Moving forward, can you each just take a moment and help us understand what the trafficking problem looks like in the specific areas that you serve? And Marcia and Jenny, since you're already unmuted, I'm just going to go ahead and kick it back to you in reverse order.
I'll start with I'm not sure, probably somebody from the CIA, but a person who is very knowledgeable with the whole sex trafficking industry in South Africa, had a call with us and informed us and helped us understand the underworld of what happens in South Africa. Unfortunately, it's estimated, and it's hard to even estimate the number, but we're looking at about 30,000 people that are trafficked in South Africa and through South Africa, and at any given time. And that came from that agent that we spoke with. It's just sobering when we think about it, because it really is so poverty and driven in many ways. And that's why we even focus on the Orphan Care Center, to help children not have to go to the streets to sugar daddies, and then the trafficking starts. We also have a safe house, but it's been interesting. 2 years ago, there was a container of children that were going to be sent to Europe, and that syndicate ring was busted. And most of the syndicate rings in South Africa are from Inner Africa. They're not South Africans. And that was a really big win for exposure and helping to put a spotlight on some of the issues that we're dealing with. Marcia.
South Africa's tier 2 watch list country in the trafficking of persons reports. And the reality is a lot's not changing and it's stagnant. And The biggest issue is corruption. The networks of poverty and payoffs from police stations to government officials is not new to South Africa, but it is certainly not new to the world, but it's hampering everything. No one knows who to trust. And so you've got trafficking. A grandmother is trafficking a grandchild so they can survive at their home and have food, all the way to what Jenny's talking about, the syndicates often led by Nigerians and many others as well. So this whole issue of law enforcement and criminals at the highest level are hampering anything from convictions to policies that need to be put in place. It's just too easy to bribe people and get off. And so where the focus has to stay is NGOs in many ways being the most trustworthy people on the ground and connecting them to the most trustworthy people in the systems around. That's a huge burden to be put on the back of NGOs. And the poverty plus HIV/AIDS has made lots of orphans extremely vulnerable. And it's a gateway country. So it's just alive and.
Thank you so much. Jenny Sue.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting to hear what things are unfolding in South Africa and what the intersections are. We have found that as we've worked around the globe, that there are three key factors that are drivers of trafficking, and it's economics, equality, and education. And wherever those three things intersect, the vulnerability to trafficking just grows exponentially. As Jenny and Marcia were explaining, poverty is a major, major issue in where I work in Thailand and Bangladesh and the Middle East. And the vast majority of our program participants at this time, and 31 was started in 2011, so we're in our 11th year. And the vast majority of our participants were trafficked by their families. And that is the standard, the norm in each of those three locations. And part of that is economics, obviously families in poverty. Another part is equality in two factors. One, the daughters are not valued, or in some cultures, they believe it's bad karma. If you're born a girl, and if you're born a girl in poverty, then you deserve it. And so you automatically bring shame onto your family just by being born. And therefore, your whole life is spent trying to make up karma, make up buntam, make up blessing, make up karma for your family so that you have a better chance next time. And for that reason, we see parents sending their children into exploitation between 8 and 10 years old, sending them into the red light district. And the children are honor bound to do what their parents say and to provide for their family. And they're both to honor their elders and to make up the karma. And so the equality issue, the fact that they're born female, and the economic issue that the family is in poverty and wanting to profit off of their exploitation is that critical kind of piece. And while there's nuance to it in each of the places we work, those are really common factors. The other equality piece that we see a lot in Asia is statelessness. And so people who are born and raised in a certain country, Thailand, for example, people who are born in what they there call the Hill Tribes people. So it is politically correct there. That's how they're known, the Hill Tribe people, aren't automatically citizens of Thailand. They're stateless, which means they aren't always entitled to education and healthcare and protection from authorities. And it makes it very difficult to get an education, to work legally, to earn a viable wage. And that nuance of equality is true globally, but there's nuances, whether it's immigrants coming across into the US or on foot through Greece or wherever it is. It's those common 3 factors.
You did such a wonderful job of explaining that, Jenny Sue. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope that you all got to see Dr. Instone's message in the chat about how important it is for us to understand how shame honor culture works. And I think especially, you pointed out, especially in anti-trafficking work. That was an excellent description. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. David, would you be able to take a moment and just explain to us what the trafficking problem looks like in the areas that you've been serving?
It's hard to understand what these women are saying as a parent for a lot of us that are new to it. And in defense of a lot of these parents, because I meet a lot of their children, usually in their teens when I meet them. And so I've had a lot of time to talk with teenage girls from the hill country of Thailand, from Burma or Myanmar, or just from a different region of Thailand where they're considered less than. And I think that a lot of parents don't understand that they're selling their kids. I think a lot of times they do, but a lot of times they don't realize it might come in the form of they even pay to have an agency take their kids from the hills down into Bangkok. And the girl usually is ashamed of where she's ended up. She thought she'd be in hospitality. She thought she'd be in like a restaurant or a hotel, but instead she's in the red light district, and I'm there pretending to be a customer. So I talk a lot with hundreds of girls in these situations now. Or they come from Africa which is crazy it sounds, by a Nigerian syndicate that's running out of Bangkok, Thailand, or Pattaya. And they thought the same thing. They thought they'd be in some sort of food industry, but instead their passport's taken and eventually they're forced to start going with customers and there's a quota. Or they came over thinking they were going to be in high-end prostitution work from Uzbekistan or Russia, and the same thing happens. The same debt that they can't keep up with is accelerating. Or what was new for me this last couple of weeks working in a new country in Asia is a lot of girls in their teens have helped their parents with a medical bill, and the club owner of the club that I met has used that debt as debt bondage. So they've helped their dad, and a lot of the girls that are in the red light districts that are in their teens are sending a certain amount of money home, but the pressure in the club or on the street or in the hotel or in the massage parlor or wherever it is that I'm meeting them, you can see that pressure element. Although I think most of us, if we walked into one of these places, wouldn't think that it is trafficking. It looks like voluntary prostitution. And that's what's so frustrating about our job in intervention, is proving it. And a lot of times, even the woman or the teenage girl herself, I don't think would use that word human trafficking to describe what she's in the middle of. And that's what's so infuriating about and why it's so slow. And then, like you said, Jeannie, like I have so much evidence of corruption. Like the raid we just did, the woman that led the raid in the counter-trafficking arm of the regional police knew that she was going over the head of other police departments and other politicians, and knowing that it would put her life and her job at risk to carry through with the raid, but she did anyways. And we need more brave women like that in leadership in the intervention space, I believe.
Thank you, David. Absolutely. And again, I'm hearing in all of you, but especially what David said about the self-identification and the things looking like consensual sex work. I think that's a way that we are all united. We see that every day in the US with trafficking survivors who aren't able to understand their situation as being trafficked, and that they believe that they are there consensually until they start to understand more and more of what their experience is and the force, fraud, and coercion piece. And I know that was my experience 100%. There's just so much that is interconnected. And now that we've gotten the problem, which is always the hardest part, I feel like, to sit through and for people to understand, it's so heartbreaking to hear just what women and children and boys and men are going through globally. I know that each of you have been a part of really a huge solution in the areas that you're serving. And so I would love to figure out what solutions have you found to help identify, to stop, to prevent trafficking, or to assist trafficking survivors in the areas that you're serving. And then David, I know that you've been participating in raids and you touched on that. So we'll go the opposite direction again and start with you.
All I want to do is aftercare, to be honest with you. I wish I could have a space in each country I worked in that had 100 or 200 beds, because that's where my heart's at. I want something different for these people I meet. They're my friends now. I don't know them by a real name. They don't know me by a real name. They don't know who I am. And I have so much love for them. I have so much care for them. And I just want to be more for them. So many girls, I always ask this question, which seems mean because sometimes I don't have hope for the situation. But I always say 100% of the time, if I have 10 minutes or half an hour that I'm talking to somebody, what would you rather do than this? What's your dream job? And a lot of girls this last week were saying just be a stewardess on an airplane, or hair and makeup, or fingernails, or culinary arts. And so I love it that there are organizations that exist, like Agape International Mission. I got to tour their facilities. That's where we buy our t-shirts and kimonos. They have a state-of-the-art cooking thing. And the girls that have come out of trafficking have made cakes and decorated cakes for even like the king of the country. And that's one of my favorite. I hang on to those stories, even though I don't really visit aftercare facilities. It doesn't make sense. It's dangerous probably for me to be seen at those places, or it doesn't make sense as somebody that's doing undercover work. But I wish I could just do that. Maybe in a decade or 2 decades, my wife and I'll be able to do what you are doing in such a great way. I don't know if I even answered your question, but
that was wonderful. No, that was perfect. Thank you, David. Jenny Sue.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I have often said that the counter-trafficking work seems like trying to empty the ocean with a thimble. Like you just keep sloshing away at it, and there's this vast amount of need in front of us. We've had 2 things that I feel really excited about in their effectiveness. One of our strategies, one of the arms of our work, is prevention, and we do prevention through education. And so God allowed us to create this tool. It's called the Priceless Cube. And it's this little storytelling block that talks about the risks and the realities of trafficking. And so my husband and I have been able to train national leaders, influencers like Jenny and Marcia. We've been able to train national leaders in 43 countries so far that are using it in high-risk areas to explain really the risks and realities. And because it's picture-based, we can tailor the story to whatever's happening. What's happening on the border between Myanmar and Thailand is different than what's happening on the border between Bangladesh and India. And yet both places are using it really quite effectively. So that's really exciting. The other piece that has developed over time, like I said, the majority of our participants were originally trafficked by parents, and they feel honor bound to provide for their parents. And when they came into their program, we had a lot of pushback from parents who were now losing revenue. And so one of the strategies that we developed over time was what we call our Hire to Study program. And that means every person that comes into our program earns a salary every month based on their participation and performance in school. And then they can participate in our system, in our work, to their highest capacity. And we support them in studying whatever they want to do. I'm a mama myself. I have 3 children born to me. I've fostered 14. And as a mama, I want my kids to be everything they were meant to be before trauma happened. So we don't have a cookie cutter model other than we pay them to learn whatever they want to learn. We've had girls go to sewing school. We've had girls learn to do hair and makeup and nails. One of our girls wanted to learn how to make wedding dresses, and now she's this amazing designer and seamstress of designer wedding gowns. We've had participants earn master's degree in social work and go to law school. And so their highest capacity, we want to walk alongside of them so that they can re-enter into their own culture as catalyst for cultural change. And they're best positioned to do that because they live there, they know the language, they know the environment, they know the culture. And so that's one of the things that I'm super, super excited about. it has proven in our work, our recidivism rate, or the number of our participants that return to exploitation, is less than 8%. So 92% of those that come into our program not only get free, but stay free. And by the time they leave our program, because they're earning money the whole time, we have a staff person, the day they come into their program, their caseworker goes to the bank and opens a bank account in their name. And when they get paid, 1/3 of their salary automatically goes into long-term savings that they don't get out until they graduate or they leave our program. 1/3 they can use to invest in their family if they so choose. And so we've had girls, like one bought a motorcycle for her dad so he could go back and forth to work. One bought chickens and built a coop for her mom in the village. One built an aquaponics garden so her family could grow vegetables and fish and have marketable things. And then the other third is just to be kids with, to go to the mall, to buy shoes, to buy canoe, to buy snacks, whatever they want with it. So when they leave our program, they generally have between $1,000 and $2,000 in the bank to start their new life with, as well as having their whole education paid for. So those are the two strategies that we've seen in our work be really effective. And it actually shifts the parents too, because the parents needed the income and they're getting an income, but they're getting the promise of their girls having status and a real job, a valued job, a respectable job in the future. And so the parents, instead of pressuring the girls to return to the red light district, actually start pressuring them to do well in school. So those are the successes that I'm most excited about. With that, I'll yield to Jenny and Marcia.
I'm also very excited about that, Jenny Sue. I know when we got to talk a couple weeks ago, that Hire to Learn program that you and Compass 31 have created is one of the most incredible empowerment models that I've heard of internationally, including what we have going on here. And so I'm very excited about it and hope that
it really works at that intersection of economics and education. It moves them into a place of status that no longer is equality really the issue that it was before either. So it really works at that intersection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that you were able to share that and everyone was able to hear it, and hoping that it continues to spread far beyond where you're currently serving. Jenny and Marcia.
Yeah, it's just so exciting. I'm excited to be on this panel because I'm learning so much.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
Great.
Hey, I think one of the big things for us is you got to know what's real. And you got to know what a real dollar looks like to be able to pick up the counterfeit. And so much of the work that we do is really going in and having broad community conversations about what is a healthy child and what does a child need to flourish, and who are we as the adults creating that world for them. And it may sound simple, but it is until you start talking about cultural things that nobody talks about when they talk about those things. And that's when you have to build a lot of trust. You have to have relationships with people, to be given the permission to invite them to talk with one another. And I think that's huge. And for us, we're really focused on children that have been traumatized as well. Or when they go to the police, do we have trauma-informed police officers and principals who are meeting them where they are? And so a lot of the work that we're doing is really calling communities to start thinking together about what is healthy and what part of culture do they define may need to shift so that we can be healthier and more prosperous in our families, and then as it ripples out into our communities. And having women have those kinds of jobs and find that survivor to the victor that Jenny, you're talking about, and then helping them see a place where they can fit in strategically if they so choose, to be a reputable voice. Everything we do is under the banner of it takes courage. And the reality is it's not going to change until people have courage to talk about things they're not supposed to talk about and to engage in ways that their culture will give them a hard time over. So we try to create that space for the Lord to be able to well up inside of them and like, hell, not on my watch, not on my watch. I'm going to have that passion. And it's fun to watch adult leaders strategically placed in a community take it on. And it's our privilege to be along.
Yeah, it's really interesting because under the It Takes Courage banner, that's what we trained globally for the last 20 years. And now we have a new training, which is coming under the same heading, but it's called Courage to Care. And as Marcia said, and we've been working alongside a Safe House, and Christy and Brittany and Ali have been integral in that process and so helpful for us. But we have just rolled it out, and we had some of the top leaders in the Pretoria area come together for the pilot a couple of months ago. And I don't think I can even express what happened in those 2 days. The emotion, the stories of pastors standing up and confessing to principals walking out in tears because of being triggered in their own life. I could go on and on. So as Marcia was saying, our heart passion is to really influence the influencers and to see them go out, and the ripple effect from that one training, and now the invitations to work with one of the largest churches in South Africa. And because one of the women's leaders was there. And now we've been invited to go into Zambia and present in every school in Zambia. So it's amazing to see how, and really the key, as Marcia said, is bringing those community leaders together, having a safe space where they can share, be vulnerable, open up, and to just see God work. And that has been so encouraging. Obviously, education is our passion. It is what we believe in every way, is education. We also, on the prevention side, we do have our Orphan Care Center where we have not only just a center, but it really is a beacon of hope in this community of Soshanguve. With 5 million orphans in South Africa alone, it's very difficult to even be a drop in the bucket. But we have set up a community project where other countries and other partners of ours have come to see what we are doing, to replicate it in their countries. And that's been such a blessing. We also build a safe house, which Safe House Project has a very big influence and has helped us in many ways, in not only financially, but in helping us with that piece, where girls that are at risk for trafficking because their grannies die have a safe place to go. And so we are really, that's our main focus, is we love on people. And David, you said that it is to me, and Jenny Sue, you said the same. We are about coming together with people that we have fallen in love with, and kids that have become a part of our life, and just walking hand in hand through difficult times, but having a place, many different opportunities, granny enrichment, education, many different areas in our community project. And we have been so blessed to see so many of our kids now graduate from high school. Daneo is a 24-year-old who has graduated from the university. She has twins. She's married to an amazing Christian man, and she is also a teacher in the community, giving back. And she has written her story about, if I wouldn't have come to the Kiris Center when I was 15, I would have been one of those statistics. And I think, I often say, if my whole life, if it was just for Daneo, it would have been worth doing what I do. And I think we all feel that way, because they aren't names and numbers. They're individuals that we love so desperately. So thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And I knew this was going to happen, that we were going to run into our question and answer time, but I really want to hear from you all. What is your biggest need in the area where you're serving? What is your vision? If you had all of the funding and all of the resources to serve the girls or boys or men in your area that are being trafficked, what would that look like? I hope that was a clear question. Jenny and Marcia, you can go ahead and answer that.
Can I start?
Sure, please.
We need tools. Jenny Sue, that tool that you and your husband put together and the blocks and the pictures. We have a radio program and we're training facilitators using oral learning. We need, I think, as an industry, more and more simple tools that we can put in the hands of one another that then they're easily trained to put in the hands of nationals and just say the same thing in different ways in schools and churches and this and that. So I would love to see a panel discussion, almost like a share of materials and resources that can be used internationally as well as locally. But that's a huge thing. Avenue, we got to work at the highest levels, but it's the grassroots that are going to keep calling people to account. And when I have girls in Kenya call out hyena school teachers who are preying on kids in school, and the kids that went through our program are going to the principal and saying, we need to get rid of this person, we're making a difference. When the grassroots grannies are saying no more because I now know another way. But when you don't have a voice and you don't understand trauma and the experiences you had and your culture won't let you do it, you're trapped in silence. And so these tools are critical platforms to just keep doing what we're doing while you're out there rescuing people and rehabilitating people. We've got to hit it on all these levels, but there's some great things out there that I don't know about. I learned of one today.
Yeah, and I just to piggyback on that, with our Courage to Care, and also it's called Holding Esther. It's a 7 drama series that is in African English right now. It's a survivor story. I think what we are really looking at and facing is we're going to need translation, because we're being asked to go into so many different places where translation is going to be needed. And so that's probably our next big need. And as we continue to branch out and then train trainers and other people who are interested in training with us, if you're interested, reach out, Curious Global. We'd love to chat with you. So
thank you, Jenny and Marcia. Jenny Sue, would love to hear from you.
I am in agreement. We need more tools. And beyond that, and as far as translations goes, our Priceless Cube, I think we have right now on our website 24 languages that it's completely, including South African English, that our materials are translated into. That's one thing. I'll look forward to connecting with you in another space. But as far as me personally, my vision for the places that I work, I, like Jenny and Marcia, like David, am in love with the people I work with. And unlike David's experience, our teams, and I personally have done outreach many times in the red light districts. I lived in Thailand for 8 years, and we went every single week doing outreach in the red light district. And I built a relationship with this one girl every week. We ate together, we played pool, we talked, we showed pictures of our kids, we cried together. Every week she stayed in the red light district. And one day I asked her, if you could do anything else, what would you do? And she said, I don't understand what you're asking me. And I'm like, what? Like, if you didn't work here, if you didn't live here, if you could be a teacher or anything, what would you be? And I don't understand what you're asking me. There is nothing else for me. This is all there is for me. And so we hugged and said goodbye. I kept seeing her week after week. And after about 6 months, when I was leaving, she gave me a hug and she said, I think I know what I would do. And I said, what? She said, if I could do anything else, I think I would have a store and I would sell things and not people. Like, that's it. For her, that was it. So my big vision really is that people would be awakened to their inherent value. that they would be able to dream again, that they would understand that they were born and created with this immeasurable purpose in the world, and that they would have the capacity to step into the fullness of that. So if I was going to frame it like politically correct, it would be about equality, that domestic violence and child abuse and exploitation aren't normalized and aren't protected by corruption and cultural paradigms. But it boils down to the one person who their soul is awakened to the possibility of something beyond what they ever imagined, and that they're worth it. They're worth it. And so that's my vision. That's what I try to convey to the people I work with, these beautiful, fierce, amazing survivors that exist in unimaginable circumstances, that they are beautiful and purposeful and priceless. And I can't wait to watch them unfold and become who they were meant to be. And so that's my vision. I think that's how we make headway in this space. And just so I see the chat, but I can only respond to hosts and panelists. So people who have commented to me, I see you, I appreciate you, thank you. But for some reason, I can't respond in the chat. So I just wanted to acknowledge that so people didn't think I was ignoring them. With
Thanks
that, I'm complete.
I think I just fixed it when you mentioned it. I was able to change that. So feel free to respond away, David.
I've never been asked that question before, and I like it. For a rock and roll band that left the music industry, left the safety of a record label, the band needs concerts where we can do what we do, shine a light on these issues. And the purpose of the concert, and the concert works so much better in person telling the story, is to recruit people. And the currency that I have to spend on this is rock and roll. That's like my main currency. And we all have currency and we're all using it. But I'm recruiting people to use the currency that they have. But the movement needs people that have developed certain currencies, certain skill sets. So when I meet at a concert, a high school or a college age, a guy or gal, develop that currency, learn about informed care and move into the field that you're already in, but then figure out how to get creative to spend the currency of your life, the currency of your time, your art, your moral capital, your political capital on the poor and the powerless. What could that look like? So the band exists to try to get ordinary human beings to dream about doing what you ladies do and pulling them in. There was just a lady that raised funds using her hair salon for the Safe House, for the Exodus Road, but she just got hooked up with the Safe House today. I think she was reaching out about wanting to get trained. And that's my dream for the band, is to pull people in. And the person heading up the international volunteer force at the Exodus Road, which is when I go over as a volunteer, there's like 50 of us that pay our own way. Because to answer a question over in the chat, there is a lot of Americans in the red light districts of Asia and Latin America and wherever I go. A lot of Americans, a lot of Westerners fueling that industry. So sometimes law enforcement needs volunteers from the United States or other countries to come in, because it's hard for law enforcement to get the traffickers to trust them. But they'll trust me because I look like somebody that does this. And so we need a ton more volunteers in all areas, in raising awareness, which helps with prevention, in intervening, which is so important, because if everybody's only doing aftercare and everybody's only doing awareness, if there's not a message being sent to criminal networks and ripping them apart, making it dangerous what they're doing, then it makes the rest of it very difficult, and all of it has to come up together so that people can do aftercare and restoration. And that's what you're pulled to. And we need, I think, more than anything else, we need some sort of mechanism. And I wish somebody could blow this out of the water. Not just hair and makeup, not just necklaces, not just all these cool products that I love selling. We need a mechanism to give women coming out of this work real meaningful employment, because these are some of the bravest, most savvy, sales savvy. Like, I wish I could hire, if I had a business, I don't know what it would be. I wish I could hire only a staff of women that used to work on the streets that I do undercover work on, because they are so incredible. They're so brave. They're so courageous. They've had to put up with so much. They'd be so good at, there's just a particular skill set that these women would have. Who is going to come up with that solution and at scale? That's my dream. How do we come up with it at scale? For the Exodus Road, we need spy equipment. We need cyber forensics gear, because we're working here too with our technology, with our volunteer staff, and with our full-time staff at finding evidence that the girl that put up a social media ad, that she's actually being trafficked. How do we prove that? We need whatever you got, essentially. Bring it to the fight, because nobody else has what you have, and no one's going to use it the way that you're going to use it. We need your creativity. We need your imagination.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, David. And again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day from different time zones and all over the place to be willing to share. This is something that we could spend 4 hours here easily in discussing all of this. And it's such a small amount of time to be able to discuss such a huge and important issue. And I want to thank you for just taking a little bit to give us the cliff notes. I see a lot of people raising their hand. Don't typically unmute during webinars. Attendees, if you have a question, it would be very helpful if you could put that in either the chat or the question and answer instead, and we could happily just take a minute to answer that. There was one question, Jenny Sue, that I saw in the chat that I was interested in. I'll address this first. The email addresses, I personally won't share people's email addresses in the after email that goes out. Panelists, you can tell me off of the webinar if that's something that you're like, yes, please share my email, let me know and I will include it in there. But I will include links to each of their organization pages so that you can learn about them there and perhaps contact them through there just for their privacy. But there is one question that I see, Jenny Sue, you wanted to answer, and just because of what I see nationally and the narrative that we have here, I'm excited to hear how that is in Thailand.
Yeah, I love this conversation and love this space. And thank you to the anonymous attendee who dropped the question about keeping some of their savings. And I just want to clarify in case I didn't communicate it effectively. So day one, they go to the bank and they get a bank account in their own. So all of their money is theirs. It's theirs from day one. And they're working with their caseworker on a long-term plan. And as soon as they leave our program, if they stay for 6 weeks, if they stay for 6 years, all 100% of that money is theirs and it goes with them. But we are working with them, and it's their caseworker who's also the same nationality as them. All of our staff in country, in Thailand, Bangladesh, and the Middle East, is local national leader. So it's not a white person keeping their money, that whenever they're ready to leave, they have all of that money set aside. And they have 2/3 of the money to do whatever they want. 1/3 we advise, we recommend that they could, if they wanted to, invest in their families, but they don't have to. And the other 1/3 they can do whatever they want with. So it's just teaching money management skills and building a nest egg for their future. And thus far in our higher to study program started 9 years ago. And in 9 years, we haven't had anybody that was upset. To every month, they go with their caseworker and they deposit 1/3 of it in their account and they watch the balance. They have their bank book, watch the balance growing. And it has been for them a super exciting thing. But that's a great question. And I see how it could be perceived that way within our culture.
Absolutely. Thank you for that explanation. If there are any final questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat or in the webinar or in the question and answer. Even if we don't have the chance to answer them right now, I'll make sure that they are recorded and I will send them to our panelists. And if they decided about answering them, I'll gather those into a document and send them out with the email. So I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get your questions asked. And before I let us all go back to the rest of, I'm sure, the chaos that we're going to walk into after that, I wanted to give just our panelists, if you had any final thoughts, anything that you just have on your heart as a burning desire to share, that this would be the time, and feel free.
I just want, again, to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join this conversation, to be a part, whether live on the panel or through the Q&A in the chat. Thank you so much that you are invested in understanding what's happening with exploitation and fighting it. And my favorite call to action is to encourage and inspire people to just be fully present to who you're with. like your own kids, your own family, your kids' friends that are sitting around your dinner table, the person that's checking you out at the grocery store. Have your eyes and your heart open to see when somebody is in distress, when somebody is hurting, when somebody is not okay, and have the courage to say, hey, are you okay? Is there any way I can serve you today? How can I help you today? Is there anything you need? And I think that is how we each individually step into this movement and start having an exponential impact, to be fully present and courageously loving as we walk through life. So I encourage you to consider it.
I absolutely agree with that, Jenny Sue. And I think that's the heartbeat of Kiris. And we are a community of people that love each other dearly. And I know that even meeting Alia and just Safe House, Christy and Brittany, I just love who they are. And I am so grateful to partner with Safe House. And it's almost like there's no words, but I appreciate what you said, because it is about living our life out and doing it very intentionally and seeing people, and not only seeing them, but taking that step into their lives to love them. So thank you, everybody who joined us today.
Yeah, I'll close us out here. So again, just thank you, all of our attendees that were able to join. I hope this was of value to you and our panelists. Again, just thank you so much. It's an honor to get to sit here with you all, and it's an honor to know you or be getting to know you and serve alongside you in this. And I loved David's just example of our personal currency and what we bring to this and how we're able to invest in this fight. And I'm so grateful that each of you has taken on that mission to do that and invest your own personal currency. And I'm just excited to see where we all are in another 10 years in this industry, and the lives that have been able to be affected, and the more stories that you all have to share of people leaving exploitation and finding hope and a new life. Thank you all again.